it's time we finally talk about it. I was honestly expecting this issue to just kind of blow over, but here we are years later and it's still relevant. We're going to talk about how the spotted lanternfly got into the US, where it came from, why it's a problem, and more on today's episode of Insects for Fun. Let's just start with the basics, as we always do. Spotted lanternflies are a species of lanternfly found in the family Fulgoridae. If that sounds familiar, it's because it should. We mentioned this family a long time ago with the episode on the peanut-headed lanternfly. Turns out spotted lanternflies are indeed related, but they aren't nearly as big, and they certainly don't have a peanut head. The species for the spotted lanternfly is Lycorma delicatula, and they aren't flies at all. They're a type of true bug known as a plant hopper. The appearance of a spotted lanternfly changes as they go from being a nymph to an adult, but the largest size for one is roughly 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters long, and 1/2 inch or 1.5 centimeters wide. These bugs are very easy to identify due to their colors and patterns. I'll of course put pictures on the Instagram, but for now I'm going to describe the changes they go through from nymph to adult, because they really are kind of pretty. The nymphs start out black with white speckles all over them, and as the nymphs mature through summer, they get a striking red mixed in to give them a Darth Maul kind of look. The nymphs reach maturity in September and October, which is why so many people are noticing them now. And the adults are yellow, black, gray, white, red, and pink. They've got 2 sets of wings, and the inner ones are the most striking, being half bright red with black dots, and the outer half being all black with a white band. So how did these insects, which are native to China, India, and Vietnam, end up on American soil? It's actually believed to have first occurred back in 2012, when they hitched a ride on a stone shipment from China. But it wasn't until 2014 that it became a verified problem, specifically for Berks County, Pennsylvania. Since then, this bug has spread at an unprecedented rate, reaching 10 different states in under 7 years, while the gypsy moth took 100 years just to get out of Massachusetts. But what's the big deal anyway? Why are they such a pain, and why is everyone freaking out every time they come around? It's true they don't do us any harm, and they aren't even causing our pets problems. But what they do cause problems for is our wildlife, specifically trees and other fruiting plants, like grapevines. Their hosts actually change as they go through development, with the earlier nymphs preferring roses, grapes, and tree of heaven, which is a native plant to China. As they mature, so do their tastes, moving to more hardwoods like walnut, birch, willow, sumac, and maple. But again, what's the big deal? The problem is that their numbers are incredibly large, and when they feed on the sap of these plants, they create openings which allow other insects to take a stab at the trees too. The other problem is that while these insects feed, they drop a substance called honeydew, which attracts smelly molds on their host plants. This all sounds pretty bad, and it certainly makes an eyesore of a mess, but it might not be that bad. I actually covered the most up-to-date take on them in a Patreon bonus episode a little while ago, but basically there is no quantifiable damage caused directly by these bugs despite their insanely large numbers. Grapes seem to be the most susceptible to damage and can definitely be killed by the lanternflies. The other tree that can be killed is the tree of heaven. Now, the deal with the tree of heaven is that yes, the plant is invasive and we don't like it, but the tree's roots are so spread and dense that if these trees die, we can't simply uproot them without erosion problems. And this is especially important in more urban environments where the tree of heaven has been planted as an ornamental. So when the trees get killed in urban roadsides, for example, there's little we can do to fix that without getting construction involved. The bottom line seems to be that the spotted lanternfly is not really that big of a deal to our native hardwood trees, at least right now. The problem is that they don't belong here and can displace other native insects or change the feeding habits of native insects that have evolved without them. The other issue, which no one is really talking about, would be money. Spotted lanternflies enjoy not just trees, but fruits as well. and can cause major loss in fruit crops to farmers, especially grape farms. The other thing too, which I mentioned in the brown stink bug episode, is that these spotted lanternflies could affect the taste of wine or grape juice just like the brown stink bugs, if they get pulled into automated grape harvesters and get blended into the mix. These are things we still don't know, but based on the densities that spotted lanternflies feed in, one can only assume that it is certainly going to cause a flavor change in grape juice or wine. So where are they right now and what can we do? Currently, the spotted lanternflies can be found in 17 states: Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio, Connecticut, Delaware, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Rhode Island, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. If you live in a different state and suspect they might be there, or you've seen one in a state currently not listed, then you need to contact the Department of Agriculture and give them a heads up. The faster your state can start quarantining and eradicating, the less likely it will be for them to spread. Now, personally, I don't think it's possible to completely get rid of them at this point. We can only start looking for some biological control measures to help keep their populations in check. But I do believe it's possible to heavily slow their spread until we can find something to help get rid of them. The things that you can do to kill them would be to destroy their egg sacs in the fall. These bugs lay 2 to 3 egg masses, which have different appearances based on when they were laid. A new egg mass will look like an inch-long blotch of alligator skin with vertical ridges. A finished egg mass will have a plaster-like covering over these eggs, which is white at first, but gets darker and dry with cracks as time progresses. It should be noted that insect sprays are not effective against these egg masses, and you need to crush them and put them in plastic bags with rubbing alcohol. It's really important to check items you leave outside with smooth surfaces or the sides of buildings and vehicles too, because they don't just lay egg masses on trees. This is probably how they've been spreading around the country so easily. The good news is they don't cause property damage, but you should probably get them off your trees or try and kill most of them because they are definitely a stressor. Right now, they seem to only have one generation a year, which is great, but with global warming, it's possible they could start lasting longer, which might actually result in detrimental effects on our trees. So the best course of action is to get rid of them if you see them. The egg stage lasts from October to June, and nymphs start emerging in May or June depending on how far north you are. The second and third instar stage lasts through June and July, with adults usually beginning in late July and August. As I mentioned earlier, I don't think it's possible to get rid of them at this point, and neither does the US government. It's also past the point of no return for South Korea as well, which was another area of introduction back in 2006. Because the government has come to this conclusion, we're now more focused on slowing its progress and finding natural biocontrol agents as opposed to just squishing everything you find. Populations are currently not known to exist within Canada, Australia, and the UK. But one specimen was apparently found in Madrid this past July of 2024. So it's quite possible that Europe could be seeing them sooner than later. Right now, it's believed that the best preventative measures are to remove their favorite host plants, which happen to be the invasive tree of heaven, and use only a small number of male trees as traps. Why male trees? Male trees produce flowers that have a really strong, pungent smell, which actually attracts spotted lanternflies. It's not a great smell for us, but it's really good at collecting spotted lanternflies, which can be great to keep them in a specific area. Areas of known infestation are also being labeled as quarantine zones, and any vehicle or items getting moved out of a quarantine zone has to be inspected and cleaned to make sure they don't spread. As for what's to come next year, I'm not sure. We'll have to keep a watch on them, but I can assure you that information will be covered on the Patreon, because that's where I record and drop all the latest news and discoveries in the world of entomology. And that's gonna wrap up this episode of Insects for Fun. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about the spotted lanternfly, and you can now help join the search to keep their whereabouts known. If you live in countries outside of their current range, then just be on the lookout. In Australia, it's believed that they could do well in the southern west side, and Canada might see them in the lower provinces closest to the US, especially on the eastern side. Make sure to rate the show on Apple and Spotify, as well as leave a review. You can also support the show on patreon.com for bonus episodes, vlogs, ad-free episodes, and more. And thanks again for listening.